speaker coming up to join us will be Macrina Morozowski.
Not bad.
Not bad, all right, not bad. The one is Morozowski, right? All right, here we go.
So today is United Nations International Persons with a Disability Day. I was asked by a close friend to come and speak today about my experience living with a disability and what that means to me. So right now I'm taking my Master's of Arts degree in Calgary, but I was a 2014 Bachelor of Arts graduate from the University of Lethbridge. I truly miss the city, but I do not miss the wind. I have and will continue to participate in sport activities. I've skied my whole life, played sledge hockey, and created a sledge hockey team in the city of Lethbridge. I've swam and was recently encouraged to try axe throwing. That was my first bullseye. Leagues across Canada actually exist, new to me. I recently started horseback riding, and in February 2015 of this year, I took home the bronze medal with Team Alberta at the Canada Winter Games. So in addition to my sporting life, I work at Fiddles Academy, which is a school in Calgary for children with learning disabilities and ADHD. I work in the community service sector, providing programs for these kids. So today I'm going to take you on a brief journey with me as I discuss my experience. I'm going to talk about education, environment, parking, independence, and the image of inspiration. So educating others on what disabilities are and how we can support one another is important. There was an article that I read which explained that for the last 30 years, we've done a lot of educating, but we need to move beyond that. We need to move beyond educating. Educating is a good first step, but change needs to occur. So now people need to start implementing changes, and as we saw with our previous speaker, that change can occur if we bug people a little bit. So when I talk about disabilities, part of what I talk about is mostly focused on physical disabilities, though when I talk about them, there's invisible, physical, mental disabilities as well. So for the purpose of this presentation, the majority focus is going to be on physical disabilities, but that's what my experience entails. So a person is considered physically disabled when a person's mobility is seriously restricted, and may include a person who uses a wheelchair, crutches, braces, or other mobility devices. So I've lived with CP, cerebral palsy, for 20 years and diagnosed at 4 years old. My parents were concerned that I kept on falling and that I kept on ruining my shoes. So does anyone know about CP? A little bit? Okay, that's great. I'm just going to briefly educate you all on what it is, but I'll keep this really brief. So there's 4 main types of CP. We have spastic, altitoid, ataxic, and hypotonic. So spastic CP is considered when there's really tight muscles, so increased muscle tone. Altitoid describes purposeless movements. Ataxic describes difficulty coordinating the movements, and hypotonic describes low muscle tone. Now, depending on what part of the brain was impacted, might depend on what is demonstrated within the body. So we have diplegic CP, which explains typically 2 limbs, which is typically the lower legs that are impacted. We have hemiplegic CP, which is typically half. Typically, it's the same arm and same leg on the So with severity, there are some cases in which people walk without aids and the disability is barely noticeable. There are people like me that use crutches, canes, or walkers. There are some that use manual electric wheelchairs. There are some that even use a combination. I walk at home with nothing. I use my crutches in the community. I'm going to concerts or shopping, I use my wheelchair. The mental disabilities can also range for each type of CP that I mentioned. It is not more or less specific to one in particular. Now, because CP ranges in severity, it can be difficult to fit predetermined boxes to access services or programs. I have a friend with CP who said this: "I'm too crippled to be considered normal, but I'm not crippled enough to get what I need." When there is an outline of a type of disorder that is required, or a certain severity that is required for a service, function, or activity, the box pertains to a specific diagnosis and eliminates so many people. There have been times when I have to exaggerate my disability and what I can do in hopes of obtaining the needed support. This highlights that no one is the same and that each person should be looked at their own uniqueness and as a whole person. So a strong component to inclusion is educating others on why the activities, programs, and environment need to be set up to benefit those who access programs. The environmental concept of design is a way to view the environment as a contributor to how severeness of disability is expressed. It can make disability seem better or worse. As an example, I'm attending a school in downtown Calgary. The building they are in just completed a renovation for the front of the school. Now, the renovation that they completed consists of 4 or 5 steps to a platform with a rotating door and 2 push doors. Now, this setup does not permit someone in a wheelchair to get up or with low mobility to get in, so there would be no reason for a push door to exist. The only way with someone with low mobility or a wheelchair to get into the building is via a sketchy wheelchair lift at the back. Not acceptable. So let's make things accessible in the first place and not have to do secondary renovations to make things accessible. Some aspects of accessibility do not have to cost large sums of money. Where I worked last year, during the winter, the floors get awfully slippery when it is snowing outside. I wasn't the first, but I was the last one to slip and fall. By the end of the day, we were talking what could be done to prevent that from happening. By the end of the month, or by the end of the week, my apologies, there was a rug from the front of the school to our offices. So we can all be involved, and sometimes accessibility doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You just have to work with the people that you work with to make things possible. The environment and the way it is set up often permits or does not permit access to buildings, services, and community events, which can limit inclusivity to all members. Environment is not just about building access. One must think about what it is to get to that place. So due to us being in the Christmas season and having colder weather, though we've been quite lucky right now, the roads and sidewalks tend to get slippery. Handicap parking is important for many reasons. So the first is the closest to the building reduces the walking on icy grounds. It also reduces the chance of falling and injury. The spots are also big for a reason. They allow for the car door to open fully for those who have reduced mobility and flexibility to get in and out of their vehicle, and also provide someone who may be maneuvering a wheelchair from in to out of their car to get where they need to go. There are some brief rules that I'm just going to review regarding the wheelchair spaces that I'd like to share. The first being the person who has a placard is entitled to park in that spot. And then you do not need to be the driver to use the placard, but you are not allowed to use it without the person who is forward in the car, nor are you allowed to use it with them if they remain in the car. So they have to get out there with you to park in that spot. The Physically Disabled Persons Parking Act states that no person shall stop, stand, or park a motor vehicle in a designated parking space or in a manner that renders the designated parking space inaccessible unless the vehicle displays a permit in accordance with the requirements. Who has ever parked in a disabled spot? You don't need to raise your hands. Has it been a family member? Have you used these excuses or heard these excuses maybe? I'll be 5 minutes. Oh, I'm picking up my child. I'll be in and out before you notice. No one uses these spots. The list of excuses that I've heard, I could go on for a while. I've heard many. It's not a drop-off zone. It's not a quick, I'll be 5 minutes. So accessible parking is not just a holiday concern, though it's beneficial at this time. It is an issue all year round, and as I said, it has its purpose. Having the ability to more quickly and more safely navigate the surroundings can be helpful and lead to independence. I find myself rather independent. I work part-time, pursuing a master's degree, play a variety of sports, and stay involved within the community. Sometimes living with a disability, I have to be a bit creative though, when maintaining independence. So just like adaptations need to be made in order to play basketball, such as using a sport chair, adaptations need to be set in place to be successfully independent, going grocery shopping in the middle of January. The challenge was bringing up bags of groceries up to the 4th floor of a Connie residence when I was living here going to school. Sometimes the RAs or my roommates weren't available, but I did not want to make 3 more trips up and down the sketchy elevator in that building to get all my groceries inside. So what I ended up doing was put a suitcase in the back of my trunk. I loaded my groceries into the suitcase, and then moved the suitcase up in one trip. It was easy. I don't know why I didn't think about it any sooner, but it provided you just have to be creative to think about how you can do this in a sufficient way and remain independent. So in some cases, support from teammates can lead to independence. In other cases, independence is questionable due to the requirements of others providing consent. Legally, I should be able to decide what I do at any point. My mental capacities are all present. I can jump out of a plane and skydive with no doctor permission. On the other hand, I was interested in therapeutic horseback riding as I heard there were benefits. Because it was a therapeutically based program, I had to get signed permission from my doctor saying it was okay that I participate in it. So sometimes being independent is not entirely possible, and we're forced to be completely dependent on another's decision. So my concern with this is that functionally I can process the benefits and the dangers to participate in any activity. Skiing, hiking, hoteling down a building, playing snow jockey, imagine that, even horseback riding. So there are potential risks and benefits to everything. I can process these. So my question is, why do we limit those who live with a disability, who can cognizantly process the risks and benefits, who live independent lives, to be controlled by someone else's choices for them? Some people have guardians and aides, but why bunch disabilities together rather than looking at them uniquely, individual and unique, and looking at the individual's specific abilities? So a constant struggle that I find hampers independence is I find embarrassing in this age, is that people assume that if you have a physical disability, you also have a mental disability. My involvement in the community, my advocating, and my work all try to demonstrate to those I interact with that mental disabilities and physical abilities can occur separately and are not always comorbid. I feel that many of us have disabilities regardless of if they can be medically diagnosed or not. Often we require some sort of support from others to achieve the goal that we set out. All my involvement tries to demonstrate that I am capable, but there comes to a point in which I, along with others, shouldn't have to prove their worth and prove their abilities. So the fact that I got out of bed today, or any other day, went to the mall to go shopping to buy Christmas presents for my friends and family, should not be viewed as an inspiration. If so, then good for you too. Because this is the reaction I often get for simply walking through a door by myself. So why is it any different for you walking through a door by yourself? Why do we constantly segregate others in this way? There have been many, many tools that have been invented which increase the level of adaptability and decrease the sense of disability, and these should be utilized. Some aspects that I'm proud of include biking and hiking at Banded Peak Mountain, rappelling down a 30-story building, ski racing at various national skiing competitions, and winning bronze at the Canada Winter Games in 2015 this year with Team Alberta. These are all great experiences that I've accomplished. If you want to be inspired, these are reasons why. Not opening a door. My hope is that if you see people with disabilities as an inspiration, you see their actual, meaningful accomplishments as an example. You see their actual, meaningful accomplishments. Part of the reason why these successes are possible is because of the support of friends and family, but also teammates, coaches, and volunteers. There are some people that are either involved in sport development, like sledge hockey or wheelchair boat, or the wheelchair basketball program in Lethbridge, or supporting existing programs like the CAS program that runs out of Castle Mountain. The support is much appreciated. If you're involved in some sport activity or program that people with various disabilities are involved in, thank you. Your sport makes things possible so that people can achieve goals, get active, and become involved in the community. Though there are difficult times in some cases, I consider myself lucky as I have the ability to come up here and tell you about my experience today. We have done a lot of educating about disabilities and disorders over the past little bit. We'll continue to learn more and more about them as time progresses. Let's continue, though, to educate and continue to make changes in our schools, community, and places of work and society. So by incorporating the themes of today into every day and working together to create change, we can make the United Nations dig with persons with disabilities every day. Thank you.